Servus and welcome to another episode of the Pro Hockey Pod, episode 40. Took a break past couple weeks from the Union Dutchmen, and I decided, you know what, we might as well go back now. So got another guy, Union grad, currently playing in our league here in the DEL in Ingolstadt. But this guy is known for having soft hands out there on the ice and pretty funny personality off too from all my resources. But happy to talk with him today. Happy he could take some time for this podcast. Welcome, Wayne Simpson.
Thanks for having me. I don't know where you got the scouting report from, but I'll just leave it be.
I'm sure we'll get some good stuff going. But yeah, like always, just kind of like to take it back at the start to where it all began. So I believe you were born in Fort Gordon, Georgia, there, USA, and you know, not exactly, I would say the state known for ice hockey, but kind of talk about your childhood there.
Yeah, so my dad was in the military at the time, so spent time there in Fort Gordon and then also Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So it is where I started playing hockey. There weren't many rinks around, especially now I'm used to Massachusetts, where I moved there when I was 11. So that influenced my hockey life obviously a lot too. But we did start, me, my older brother, and my younger sister. We all played hockey down there, and they had good programs. I know it's not as big as football down there, especially, but we found time, and it was a great experience. I still am in touch with a couple of my friends that started playing hockey with down there.
And you brought up a good point there. Like it is more of I would say like football would probably be the number one sport down there. So kind of what drew you and, you mentioned your brother and your sister as well. Like what drew you all to kind of hockey?
Well, yeah, my dad played hockey at Air Force Academy and Boston University. So, we're not Southerners because they're both born in Maine, and my dad spent time in Massachusetts. My grandfather was actually athletic director at Boston University. He was one of the athletic directors that started Hockey East. So, we had a big BU connection. And when they moved down there, they still had their northern roots, so they wanted us to play hockey, and we were living pretty close to a good facility down there, actually. So it just all worked out, and I think we started at a really young age, and we all fell in love with it.
And talk about too, like kind of like the athletic genes in your family. Like as you said, your dad was a D1 athlete, then both yourself, your brother, and your sister all D1 hockey players. Like so I'm guessing your childhood, pretty competitive maybe in the mini stick street hockey growing up.
Oh yeah, a lot of mini sticks, street hockey, pretty standard. My mom was a good athlete too. She was played more basketball, but yeah, as you said, me and my brother ended up going to Union D1, and my sister went to Providence College. So we were competitive. We pushed each other, I guess. And my parents they really guided us and gave us the resources to improve, and they made sure we enjoyed it, because I think their philosophy was, if you know the desire's got to come from within. You can't really force someone into a craft that they're not passionate about. So it worked out well.
Did you play any other sports growing up? Because obviously hockey's kind of a more winter seasonal sport that way. Like, what was there anything else you did maybe in the summers?
um I did a little soccer, and that's pretty much it. I think never really got into baseball or anything like that. I never played football, even though I was in Georgia. And I guess as I got to high school, where I was supposed to play a couple more sports, I dabbled with a little stuff. But I saw it as an opportunity to stay in shape in the off season, and like also be with my same friends that I'm playing hockey with. It's always fun to be on a team and in a competitive environment.
And let's talk about your kind of your minor hockey path. Like you mentioned, I believe you said at 11 you had moving to Massachusetts there, but before that, growing up in Georgia, like how was the structure? Obviously, as we've said, it's not a very hockey first state.
Yeah. So there were actually two programs based in Atlanta. That's pretty much where I was, and it was called the Atlanta Fire and the Atlanta Rage, and we had a big rivalry. I don't know. It seemed like a big rivalry at the time, but in order to find teams to play against, we had to travel a lot. We go to, Birmingham, Alabama, up to Louisville, Kentucky. We went to, let's see, where else? Nashville. We'd go down to Florida, playing a tournament there. So, I mean, I remember these road trips. I have a lot of childhood memories of, piling into the car with the siblings, and we found a way to get TV going back in the day when it wasn't really popular, pop in a VHS tape and watch it, because we spent a lot of hours in the car there. Got to stay at some hotels and, play mini sticks in the lobby and stuff like that. So it was a lot of travel, but again, a lot of good memories from that time.
Must have been a lot of like good planning by your parents, because like your brother, yourself, and then also your sister would have been playing hockey. So like, there would have been some weekends where, your mom might be taking you somewhere and your dad might be taking your brother somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wasn't concerned with the logistics at the time. I just was taken along for the ride, but I think we found a way to, we played on a couple different teams, two different age groups. So we would play up a age group, and then just found a way where we were playing in the same location at the same time. And I'm sure there were times when we were split up, but my mom and dad were so committed to getting us here and there and making sure we were able to meet all the commitments and, have fun. So again, we enjoyed every minute of it, I think.
And what was the reason for the move to Massachusetts there?
I think it was, my parents were just starting to consider our future, and I think they thought we were all pretty good athletes. Maybe the opportunities in hockey were better up north. It's good. I'd have to ask him again. I don't think it was 100% hockey motivated, but I think that was maybe the main factor. My dad is a doctor, so he had a good practice down there, but he ended up starting a practice up in the Boston area. So I think with his job, he was obviously able to move around. And with the hockey programs up north, we eventually were able to get into some good club teams. We were all pretty much on two teams at once, just logging a lot of minutes on the ice, and really helped our development. So, and then of course we're always raised to be, academically very focused too. So there's good opportunities up here for that, or up in Massachusetts. So I think that was the main motivation.
And then you end up later attending Lawrence Academy there. So I always, on this podcast like to say, I'm Canadian, so we don't really have the kind of US high school prep system like the US has. Like for us, it's, you play minor hockey and then you go to junior, where in the US you have junior options, but you also have this kind of high school prep option. So maybe talk a bit about kind of how it was for you at Lawrence. You ended up playing 3 years there, I believe. And every year, it seemed like you just kind of took a step forward, putting up more points every year. And then evidently you started getting some D1 interest.
Yeah. So I think the landscape is changing rapidly, but at least back when I was playing, you know, everyone started getting their sights focused on maybe earning a spot on a D1 team. And to do that, the public school programs, they were pretty good, but I think you had a better chance if you either went prep school or there were junior leagues out. And there's the EJHL at the time that had teams on the East Coast, or I even know of guys that would go out and play, in the BCHL out in Western Canada, stuff like that. But I thought it was a good move in order to go D1 to go to Lawrence Academy, where they had a good hockey program. They had a lot of players at the time that were already committed to good D1 programs. So actually, my older brother was there. He is 2 years older than me. So obviously that was a motivation. And I was actually a day student. I only traveled 15 minutes to get to the school. So it just really all worked out, and play really good competition. And I think, as you said, I started getting better every year, and started preparing me to play D1, or at least get looks from some programs.
And I like to ask, all the guests too, you mentioned your parents, as well as being a focused athlete, you were also a focused student. Like that was very important in your family. Was there ever any point where you had ever thought about the major junior route, just because, at least in Canada, we grew up with that route. You could start at 16. So it kind of gets like the first focus, where NCAA you might hear about later when you're older. But for yourself, like, playing, prep school, was there any, major junior teams? I don't know, maybe for you it was the WHL, I'm not sure, but like looking at you, or was it strictly my focus is D1?
No, to be honest, I didn't really have any interest from the teams there. I'd be honest in saying I was a late bloomer when I was young. I'm sure not many people saw me as a prospect or anything like that, but I didn't let it bother me. I just kept playing. So I didn't really even have that. Honestly, I wasn't that familiar with major junior landscape, and I didn't know much about teams or anything like that. So for me, that was my path, and it worked out that way. But I never really thought about going that route. But maybe it was a blessing in disguise. I think I really wanted to get the college degree, so Union was a great opportunity as it ended up, and it was both for athletics and academics really good for me.
Um, I believe your brother went to Union as well,
Yeah.
and we'll get to that in a couple minutes here. But I was curious. So when you're starting to get this interest, as we said, you were every year at school there, or at prep school, sorry, you were making a step and putting up more points every year. Like, were you getting lots of interest? Like, were you going on visits? Like, how was kind of the recruitment process for you?
Well, it started during my junior year, and Union was the first team interested because my brother was there and they were familiar with me. And, you know, junior year, I think, is honestly when I took off a little bit, and maybe I was going to start getting more looks, but I actually committed before I even started my senior year of high school. At Lawrence Academy. I was impressed with the program. I wanted to go play with my brother, and you know, they're obviously a small school with a new up and coming program. Not many people knew about them at the time, but I had watched them from my brother playing there, and I really thought they had a good thing going. And I ended up committing there. I didn't really have any other official offers, or I was kind of just getting to the point where I was starting to get interest. But uh, you know, you always second guess a little bit. I wondered, maybe if I had left the door open, but I definitely made the best decision for me at that point when I committed, and it worked out great.
Were you ever, you talk about like second guessing there, but I was wondering, like, Union at that time was an up and coming program. Like, now whatever it is, 10 years later, like they've solidified themselves as, a very good school. And we were both in college at the same time. You could see the kind of trending upwards.
Right.
Um, how the school eventually kept growing every year and eventually won a national championship. But were you ever nervous kind of early on that, because it was an up and coming school, that maybe, the things they were talking about that they wanted to do might not happen, at least in your time there, because it does take time to kind of build these programs up?
Yeah, a little bit. They obviously sold it really well, sold the vision. There's a lot of variables when considering where to go. And for me, if I held out and went to one of these big schools, maybe I don't have a great role on that team. They were really interested from the get go. They were the first team. They kept pushing, and to me, it's a good feeling when someone wants you that bad, and you have a feeling that you'll have all the resources and the tools to go in there and earn a spot and get a lot of playing time. So I did believe that with the recruiters they had there, that they keep bringing in good classes and that we could keep building year after year. And if you look at their progression, that's pretty much what happened even after I was gone. It started, I think, before, and they really went on a pretty impressive stretch for a small school that, again, not many people were talking about in college hockey.
No, I definitely agree. They definitely are probably one of the maybe top 5, top 10 schools of the past 10, 15 years that have just like continued to grow every year. And
Yeah.
um, did you know anyone else going to Union when you were going there? Obviously, your brother was there, as we mentioned, but was there anyone else that you kind of knew that was either there or committed?
No, I don't think so. There weren't many Massachusetts guys, which I think we had one, Brian Yanovich, that was there before that I was familiar with. But no, I had started to meet my brother's classmates, obviously, from going to games and going on visits. But we had a lot of Canadians, a lot of guys that I wasn't too familiar with, to be honest. They came from different leagues. And so, really, my brother was the only one I knew. And that was an important factor, obviously.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, did he kind of like take you under his wing there and kind of mentor you? Like, I mean, obviously, I think you would have visited him a couple times before, but did he kind of, protect you in a sense, show you the way, and kind of prepare you for life at Union?
Yeah, he did. I went early there to get adjusted before the school year started, and he brought me in. I stayed at his house and stayed on a couch in his house, and started to prepare me for what I should expect as practices start and games start and travel and balancing school and stuff, and little social aspects. So it was definitely helpful to have someone looking out for me.
And do you think too, you obviously, I believe you went to school, you were 20 years old, turning 21 that year, I believe, as a freshman. Like, do you think going later kind of helped you? Like you mentioned, you were kind of a late bloomer, and I think that also like contributes to maybe like, maturity too. Cause, someone going to college at 18, this could be all overwhelming for them, but someone like yourself going at 20, you kind of with your brother might know how to handle it, what to expect.
Yeah, a little bit. It's funny though. I think I was the youngest guy in my recruiting class as it worked out. I think I was 19 when I went, so turning 20. But I repeated a year when I transferred to Lawrence Academy from Acton Boxborough High School, where I played originally. So I got that 5th year. I know a lot of people will go and play junior somewhere or PG, or there's a lot of routes to go, but I know a lot of kids started seeing the benefit of delaying, the entry to college hockey, and that's what I did. And it definitely made me more mature as I showed up at Union College.
And you guys, as we talked about, kind of were building every year and you end up, I believe the 11-12 season and 12-13 season, you guys had crazy teams. Like if you go through that roster and like, since like all the guys that have come out of there that have signed, whether it's NHL deals, AHL deals, and have gone to Europe, like played long time pro careers, but you guys end up being back to back ECAC champs there. Like, did you feel kind of those years, being your junior and senior year that you guys like the plan had worked, kind of what they had sold you on, and now you guys were, a powerhouse in that division?
For sure, yeah, I know. I know. My freshman year, we ended up going to the Final Four in the ECAC tournament, and you could sense just in the locker room what a huge deal it was from the the leaders of the team, from the coaches. Like it had never been done before. And then you fast forward to junior senior year, and that it was already almost like the expectation. Like we finally had the confidence, and we knew we were that good. So we went into, I think it was at Atlantic City both years, and with a different perspective. We had a lot of hunger and a lot of drive, and I remember those games very, very, very well, winning the and lifting the trophy at the end, and it obviously was very rewarding.
It's always good to win things, and you got to do it
Yeah.
twice there at Union. One thing I wanted to ask you that I kind of forgot to, we skipped ahead a bit, was after your freshman year. So freshman year, as we said, it's always an adjustment for guys, and some guys adjust quicker, whatever it may be. It really looked like going into your sophomore year and for the next 3 years, you had taken a very big step and kind of knew how to perform for Union, on the ice there. Like that summer after your freshman year, like, did you do anything differently, whether in terms of like training or just prepping for the year because you kind of had your foot wet from the year before?
I don't think I did anything different per se. It was just another year of development that I had the benefit of having. For me, it was always about confidence, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like the adjustment factor. I had never lived away from home before. As I said, even when I went to Lawrence Academy, I was living at home, and all of a sudden you're in a dorm, and you just got to learn how to take care of the body, take care of yourself, and balance all the factors that there are in college life. And I think there's a huge adjustment there. So, looking back, I wish, maybe I did a few things differently, but obviously, I think eventually I started getting it, and I definitely felt more confident on the ice my sophomore year. And, obviously just jumping from prep school hockey to college hockey, you're all of a sudden playing bigger, stronger, faster kids. So once I had another year of working with the strength coaches there and, allowing my body to mature a little more, it was very helpful.
One of the bigger rivalries I would say too is the Union RPI rivalry. So
Yeah.
just kind of talk about those games, right? Like, both like Union's kind of got that smaller barn, but it's loud. And then obviously RPI, there's a lot of history there. So just kind of talk about that rivalry and your experiences in those games.
Yeah, that was, our biggest games by far. Only 30 minutes away, I think, the schools. So as you said, our rink gets really loud when they pack it because it is a barn. That's the best way to describe it. But just it gets so loud, and there's standing room only. For the RPI game, it was always our biggest crowd, and even at RPI, they were actually in this huge like airplane hangar looking thing. But same effect, they would pack it, and every game just seemed that much more intense. It was playoff hockey, from the drop of the puck. So I think overall, I don't have the numbers, but I think we fared pretty well. I'm happy to say they had really good players going through their system too. They had some really good years. So every time we knew it was going to be a close game, and there'd be some seasons where we play them like 6 or 7 times because we had the 2 ECAC games. We play them a few extra times, and then I think one year we even matched up in playoffs. So it was a war every time. That was the expectation.
That's one of the best things I'd say about college in terms of the hockey is there's always that one team you have like a history of rivalry with, which is
Right.
makes the games more meaningful. But I want to ask you too. I've asked the other Union guys who've been on, so Carzy, Juris, Troy, both Bodies have been on. Like when I talk to you guys kind of about your experience at Union, the biggest thing you guys talk about other than the hockey side is kind of the bond that you guys kind of all made together and still have today. Like you all still stay in contact together. I believe some have mentioned there's a group chat that still fires up once in a while, but you know, it's rare to kind of hear that. Like I think some teams like they try to promote that bond happens, but with you guys, it's like you guys did everything together. It was such a family atmosphere. Just kind of talk about that and obviously how it obviously made the college experience even better because you guys, did everything together and you guys all got along and just kind of that family atmosphere.
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely true. We come from all different walks of life. We're all over Canada, US, but everyone finds a way to stay in touch or get together in the summers and whatnot. And yeah, the bond was really strong. And I find, as a team, if you want to win, you really got to care about each other. You got to enjoy like every day at the rink, every practice, because a lot of times it is tough. We'd have tough practices, tough workouts, a tough stretch of games, whatever it is, but you just really need to come together as a team and find a way to get through it. And I think we were really good at that. And obviously it continues to this day. Yeah, we have group chats and fantasy football leagues and everything, and I play on the team with Matt Bodie, as you know. So obviously stayed in touch with him and his classmates, and it made the experience that much better for sure.
Um, good time to bring this up then, since you brought it up. Speaking of fantasy football, got a question from a fan. Told me to ask Simpson how the Mr. Saxo Beats are doing this year.
Yeah, I figured that was coming.
So care to comment on this? Obviously, for the fantasy lovers out there, this could be a good one.
Well, I don't want to jinx it, but I'm in line for a big win this week, but it just happens to be in what we call the toilet bowl. So it would be the two teams with the worst records. So, I had some adversity this year, but I'm hoping to pull this out. I'm playing Kevin Sullivan. I don't know if you know that name, but I should be able to beat him. There's a big Monday night game that'll happen tonight. So I'm in a good position, but yeah, it wasn't my best year. I don't know who told you to ask that, but they probably have a better record than me this year for the first time in a while.
Well, it wasn't Kevin Sullivan, so I can promise you they probably have a better record. Well, at least you could end up winning another trophy, you get to raise
Yeah,
something at the end.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Um,
that's how I look at it.
you mentioned too, kind of when we were talking about the family thing to kind of go back to Union there, you guys all were going through things together. And one thing that's very famous about Union, that's been brought up many times, and I'm curious to hear your stories, is the famous spring workouts.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of guys have commented on these, shared some memories of like times that were their funniest. I think Matt Bodie talked about you guys had to do a pool one and guys were like, trying to tread water there with like a weight
Yeah.
or something and all this. But before we get to any kind of maybe one that sticks out to you the most, like just talk about these workouts on a whole, because I've when hearing these, I've told the guys who shared them and also the listeners, like at the time you guys probably didn't understand like the purpose behind them. It wasn't always just a physical thing. It was more like a mental thing to mentally prepare you guys to be able to get through anything that would come, that season or later in life.
Right. Yeah. Obviously in the moment, all of those sucked, but it's funny that those are like the days that I remember the most, waking up at, it was like 4 a.m. and doing these crazy workouts. And yeah, I think they were both physically and mentally just really tough, but we'd get through it, and then we're sitting in the locker room and you just can't help but laugh. Like, what did we just go through? But we were there for each other and we did it. And, probably obviously there was a method to the madness, and we had coaches that believed in that stuff. And in the end, it brought us closer together. That's for sure. And I think it prepared us for some of the challenges that we would face both individually and as a team. And yeah, there's a lot of memories of those days for sure.
Is there any one specific or type of workout that kind of sticks out to you or a funny memory?
Yeah, I remember the first one I think of, it was after my freshman year, which I talked about earlier. We went to the Final Four in the ECAC, it was just in Albany, which isn't far away. And we won the first game. Teams escaping me that we beat, but in the finals we played Cornell, and they had a really good team that year, and we ended up losing maybe 3-1 or something like that. So we got this second place trophy, which was, for our program it was a good, successful year. But I think it was the first workout of the spring where we were, there's this loop around campus and it's a really far run. I'm not a good long distance runner as is, but we all ran in a team, in a line. And it was, the guy in front had the second place trophy over his head, and then he had to hand it back to the guy behind him. And that would keep going until it got to the end of the line. And then that guy had to run all the way to the front. And we just kept doing it, handing it around. And I think the message there was just, to not be content with the trophy. It was kind of like a sarcastic, but again, something that it was very tough. It was a long run. I want to say it's like anywhere from 3 to 4 miles. And it was definitely a memory.
Creative workouts at Union. There's been
Yeah. Yeah, there are some creative people behind the scenes coming up with this stuff. It wasn't just straightforward, but they were challenges.
and then as I mentioned, you end up winning the ECAC championship there your last 2 years. And I'm curious, so when you end up graduating from school there, like what did you end up graduating in? Like what was your degree in?
I had a managerial economics degree and a minor focus in mathematics. So, yeah.
That's a good one to have.
Yeah, I think so. I hope to put it to use someday.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, well, as we mentioned, like, so I maybe it started happening earlier in your senior year there. Like, were you ever getting interest from teams, or before that, had you ever attended like NHL camps? Because I know like in college the rule is like you're allowed to invite college guys to maybe the rookie camp to kind of see them. Like for example, I know Juris went to a couple just through him, but were you doing that as well, or getting other interests, leading up to your senior year?
Yeah. So my junior year was a big step up for me, and I got invited to Boston, the Bruins development camp after that. So that was before my senior year, and that was a really good experience. That's like your first, even though it's not pro hockey, like you get a taste of the locker room and the facility and the expectations. And you got to see a lot of good players that you don't come across that are playing major junior, or maybe they're European and stuff like that. So that was really the first interest I got. And that was the only development camp I went to.
And then after that, like as I said, when you graduated there, was the plan always to go play pro? Because you mentioned like you obviously have a good degree that you had earned at Union. Was the plan, I always want to, at least try pro and see what it can bring?
I think I didn't really get to that point until, as I just mentioned, I got invited to the camp. And that was kind of a trigger in my mind, like maybe I can play after I'm done college. So I wasn't gonna, I didn't have any interest to sign anyway, but I wanted to get the degree and then, go give the professional hockey thing a try. And I'm glad I did. I ended up in, I'm sure we'll touch on the next step, but ended up in a good situation. And in my mind, I was always ready to pivot and use my degree, but ended up being able to continue to improve year after year. So
And so when you end up, as you mentioned, you end up going pro, after your senior year there, you go to the South Carolina Stingrays in the East Coast Hockey League. And was that strictly like an East Coast contract? Was it an AHL two-way and you were sent down there to start, or how did it work for you?
no, that was strictly an East Coast contract. Went to I went to Boston rookie camp, and then I went to Providence camp on a tryout. Ended up getting released, and then the affiliation was with the South Carolina Stingrays, and the coach at the time was Spencer Carberry, and he was at the camp, and I remember him taking me aside on the bus and saying, I don't know how things are going to work out here, but we'd love to have you in South Carolina. So that ended up being the route I went.
And that first year you ended up playing with Kyle Bodie there, I believe, there in
Yeah.
South Carolina. I was texting him earlier, but he's a little time difference, so couldn't get any dirt. But you also play with a teammate of mine, Paul Rodriguez.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
he was a Oswego grad. I was just looking at that. But how was the first year for you? Because we mentioned like adjustments right before, like the first adjustment to college, like that first year is, people getting their feet wet. How was the first year in the ECHL for you?
Yeah, it was an adjustment with the style of play and the quality of players. And, in it's just really important to stay focused. And, you kind of need some good breaks at that level. Like there's so many moving parts when you're down in the third league. You got guys coming in, coming out. Like you can find yourself out of the lineup because, you know, you have two affiliates and they needed players to come down and play. There's just a lot of different things going on. So you just got to stay focused and, you know, try to keep improving, try to produce. For me, I think I got a little bit of a slow start and I found myself out of the lineup even. And then eventually, once things died, we lost a few bodies and I had an opportunity to play more power play on a top line, etc. And I started building that confidence, which was a common theme for me over my career. It was just so important to get to a point where I knew I belonged out there and that I knew I could be, produce and continue to improve.
Would you say too, because there's that kind of, I don't want to say like stereotype, but like everyone talks about the East Coast as it's a grind, like because it's, as you said, there's so many moving parts, guys called up, sent down, released, stuff like that. And as you said, it's important to kind of be able to gain your confidence there. But mentally there, like that first 2 years when you were strictly in the East Coast, like was it a grind for you, or were you just, focusing on every day, like you said, staying positive and just trying to get better and kind of enjoy the experience? Because, some of us, we get 1 year pro hockey, some of us get 10. Like you never know when it's going to end. So were you just kind of, along for the ride and doing everything you could?
Yeah, it is a grind with the scheduling, and you end up playing 3-3s, 3 games, 3 consecutive days, doing these long bus trips. We had sleeper buses with bunks. I'm sure a lot of people have come across them, going up as far as Kalamazoo, Michigan, and really all over the East Coast. And I had the benefit of playing in South Carolina, which is in Charleston. It was great, the home life, that factor, but it was important to always have that drive because I knew I wanted to play at a higher level, even though it was a great place. It was important to always stay focused and remember that, as you said, with the way that league was, you could find yourself out of a job pretty quickly if you didn't do your job. So that was always my focus.
And I think that that second, like you guys had a very, very long playoff run. I couldn't find if you guys won or lost in the finals, but you ended up putting up in the playoffs there 38 points in 27 games. So I'd say you kind of found your confidence in the most important time. You had a good season as well. But to be able to, I always tell people there's a difference to be able to perform during the season, but then also to be able to perform in playoffs, because the hockey does change. Like it gets a little rougher, tighter. It's not as many 3-and-3s as you would say, and travel and all that. But how was that playoff run for you? And kind of talk about you can fill me in actually, because I didn't get to see. Did you guys have been winning? Did you lose in the finals? How did it work?
We lost in game 7 in the finals. I'll start with that. So that's still hurts a little bit. I actually have a different player on my team this year. That was my centerman there. And I just ended up on a good line, and we all started playing really well at the time. And, we had individual success, but obviously the goal was to win the whole thing. And we played, that was our third 7-game series. One of them was 6. It was just such a long, playoff run and a lot of games, and it was challenging. I know we were playing Toledo, and we were up 3-0, and they came back to force game 7. And I think that last game went into 3 overtimes or something. It was just so many crazy hockey games. And again, we built a good connection. You talked about it at Union over the course of 4 years, but even in this short season, I keep in touch with a few guys from that team because it was just a rewarding experience, and we really formed close bonds too that year. So yeah, that was my longest playoff run for sure to date.
When you mentioned too, it kind of came full circle. Andrew Rowe, I believe, was your center there, and now you guys are back together in Ingolstadt. But
Yeah.
after that long playoff run, I'm assuming you had an agent. Like, were you communicating to him, and maybe he was reaching out to teams about, hey, like, Wayne has had 2 very successful years in the East Coast, and obviously this long playoff run, like, it's time for him, or he'd like a chance in the next level, kind of AHL there, to take that next step?
Yeah, it was that. And in combination, I had an agent working for me, and the guy who actually ended up getting me the next year, I signed with Portland, the Pirates in the American League. And the coach there was Tom Rowe, who lived in Charleston. So I think partly scouting, but partly just to take in some hockey. He went through a couple of those games on the playoff run you're talking about. And I know after the season, my agent called and said he's been talking to, that would have been Florida Panthers system. And, said the coach there really likes you and wants you to potentially go play in Portland the next year. And over the course of the summer, ended up settled on me going there on a tryout. And eventually I was able to make the team and play my first year in the American League. So I had a couple factors work out to help me there. But I think the playoff run, the team success, paved the way for me to take that next step too. So I'm obviously grateful to the organization in South Carolina and all my teammates from that year.
I think no matter what success you have or chances you get, you kind of need a bit of luck, or like somebody to see you or like you, for that matter, at the right point. And as you said, like, things have to kind of fall together there. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously Tom Rowe now is also in our league, now in Nuremberg.
Yeah.
So it's funny
Yeah.
that everyone just seems to come to Germany.
I know. Full circle, big time. Yeah.
And how was that first year for you? Like, you made the step up to the AHL there in Portland. Was it again kind of a little bit of an adjustment period, or because of your 2 years, I would say, grinding, in the East Coast, you kind of were ready for everything, kind of knew what to expect?
I think I was more prepared than in the past. I mean, I know the AHL is a step up, but there's a lot of good players in the East Coast Hockey League. It's a good league. I know people see it as the third league in North America, but there's a lot of good players there and a lot of potential. So I think you step up, and then you're playing more against, a combination of veterans that have been pros for a long time, and young prospects that maybe will play in the NHL for a long time. So you just gotta earn a spot somewhere in the lineup, and never take a day for granted, because I always thought I had the risk of, you never know what happens. If the Florida Panthers make a trade and they end up with a few more bodies, then you might find yourself out of there. So you just gotta, every time you're in the lineup, you gotta make the most of it. That's how I looked at it.
It's definitely a good way to look at it. And it's also, as you mentioned, kind of control what you can control, because if they do make a trade, it's out of your hands. And
Yeah.
you want to give them all the reasons to keep you, not be the one guy out. But after that year in Portland, you end up going to Providence. playing with a buddy of mine, Kurt Mannheimer, Jordan Schwartz, I believe.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, living with him too. He was my
living
roommate.
with him. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought he talked about that before, but I forgot. So how was it living with Schwartzy? You know, that guy's I always tell people he's a true pro. Like that guy, you know, puts in a lot of work and a big reason why he's a leader on our team. But you know, any stories you want to share of him, or you know, maybe those can't be said on camera?
No, I mean it was awesome. We had a lot of fun. It was a good city with a lot to do, but we found ourselves playing Nintendo 64 a lot, and we would just really battle Super Smash Bros. So you got to tell him that I really handed him a lot of losses back in the day, and I think some Mario Golf too. It got competitive, but we just had similar interests. We both came in on tryouts, had to find our way on the team, and I played with him most of the year. It just, we got our housing letters at the same time and ended up getting a nice apartment, and we had a lot of fun that year, and he was a great player, so I benefited from playing with him for sure.
It's weird to hear you say that he's a gamer. He keeps telling everyone that he used to be back in the day, and I just can't see it because he's just that
Yeah. Yeah.
too serious type. But no, I'll let him know that you hold the trophy for Nintendo
Yeah,
64. So
for sure.
see how that goes over. Um, so you end up like over your time in the AHL there, you end up playing you know, 4 years in the American Hockey League. So you make that next step and continue to produce every year. So the next year was in Hershey, and then after that was in Rochester.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious, you know, at this point, you know, you've been able to take the step, and then there's really only one more level to go to. And was it ever maybe frustrating for you or discouraging at points because, you know, you were consistently producing points in the American League, but never was getting, you know, a sniff at the top level? Did that ever cross your mind, or you were just again like kind of, you know, I'm enjoying where I am, and whatever comes next comes next?
No, I guess it's a combination of both. Excuse me. Obviously, the goal was to get to the NHL, and I wasn't on an NHL deal until that year in Hershey when I was signed with Washington. So I went to main camp there and played a couple preseason games and thought I was starting to make some good strides and feeling good about my game. But again, it's hard to make that next step. I feel like I was playing well, and I know there's probably a lot of other guys that thought they were playing really well and deserved a chance. So I don't think getting called up per se is necessarily in your chance. You just got to worry about the on ice product, what you're doing. So you can't get caught up in the different factors and you know, all the bodies moving around. So I was just focused on my game. And again, I think, team success, even at the American League level, helps everyone. So that's always a message I believed in. If the team is doing well, more guys are going to get chances maybe to the next level. So I was always buying into the team play aspect and trying to, for me, I'm a forward, and I think the expectation was to produce a little bit. So I was always trying to do that, but the goal was to get to the next level. And yeah, it was frustrating to never get a chance or get a sniff.
Would that be kind of your decision then after the year in Rochester there, your fourth year, to kind of say, you know what, I'm gonna go give Europe a chance?
Yeah, I think it was a factor. I think I was getting to an age where uh, in North America, the opportunities are getting fewer and fewer. Whereas in North America, or sorry, in Europe, a lot of older guys play until they're 35, really. So I didn't know what my European career was going to be, honestly. I signed a 1 year deal and came over with my fiance and thought it would be a good experience. And if for whatever reason I didn't like it, then maybe that would have been the end. But it was came over and was impressed with how professional the league was in Germany, and it was also great for our personal lives. So obviously, I'm still here today, which I'm sure we'll get to. But uh, it was a tough decision coming over. It was always nice for me. I was signing on teams that were, at least a drive away from my hometown. Like every year, I was within, let's say, 5 hours. Like I wasn't out in California or anything like that. It felt like I was just playing hockey at home, and it was good money and very professional, good organization. So I liked every place I played, but it got to that point where I think it made sense to come over and try Europe.
I mean, Ingolstadt is probably a good place to come over for your first time. Obviously, Munich's not too far. The city itself, I think, is good size and you're treated really well. But what was kind of the biggest maybe adjustment for yourself or for you and your fiance, coming over to obviously Europe? Because as you said before, you'd always been so close or a driving distance away from family. Now you're a time change, a flight, different language, country,
Yeah.
different foods, everything like that.
Yeah. We were kind of lost coming in. I think that's probably normal. But I had a lot of guys that were North Americans that had come over and been playing here anywhere from, a couple years to maybe guys that have been here for 6, 7, 8 years. So obviously they're helped me, learn the foods, learn whatever, traffic, driving, everything. So I think it was important to feel like you were, in control, like settled in your personal life before you can have success on the ice. And I think I reached that point pretty quickly where, it felt like a good place. And there's a lot to do around here. And there was also the on ice adjustment. It's just a different style of play, the size of the ice being the main difference. But there were a lot of guys, the imports in this league had played on that I was familiar playing against back in both the East Coast League and the American Hockey League. And I think eventually, after a few games, started feeling more and more confident.
And confident you were. That first year, you end up having the most points in the DL there, 56 points in 52 games. So some would say, looking from the outside, that the adjustment was pretty easy. But some people might not realize this unless we were to talk about it. But that was also the year where we got hit with COVID and there was no playoffs, and then things kind of changed for the next couple of years. But after that season, you went home, and as I said, we're going through this kind of pandemic. Was the plan always to come back to Ingolstadt? Like, had you already signed an extension, or was it still up in the air because a lot of leagues didn't even know if they were going to be running because of this pandemic?
Yeah, I really didn't know. To be honest, I went home and we were supposed to get married, and there's a lot of stuff going on in my personal life that was maybe sooner, and I didn't know what the implications of like what was going on with COVID. I mean, no one did really. So I had signed a 2-year extension on the hockey side. So I thought for the first time that I had clarity. Like I never really had that in my career. So for the first time, I had clarity. I was going to go home, not have to, be near the phone to talk to the agent. And it ended up being like the busiest summer because we were just, talking to teammates, just what do you think's going to happen or what are you hearing and stuff like that. It was, there are a lot worse tragedies going on in the world. So I obviously keep it in perspective, but it was a tough summer for, not knowing what was going to happen with the league. Or, for a while it looked pretty grim. It looked like we wouldn't be playing. And then I just was wondering what I was going to do and stuff like that. But I found a way to, I was pretty much just doing like workouts from, like Rocky Four, just working out outside, like lifting I don't know, just finding a way to stay busy. But in the end, we were able to play. And even though it was without fans, I was happy that the league found a way to keep it going. And then obviously I'm still here now and it's been great.
Yeah, everybody had to find a way to work out for those couple
Yeah.
summers there. It's getting
Yeah.
creative, but I'm sure you're not the only one who was lifting logs outside or whatever, throwing stones. Um, One thing I want to ask you kind of about, so you mentioned you signed that 2-year extension, and it's kind of the first time, I would say, I guess, since college that you have kind of, I know where I'm going in the next couple of years,
Right.
feeling. How do you as an athlete, keep the drive to perform and not get complacent? Because some athletes, I would say, or in some countries, guys will sign these extensions for 2, 3, 4 years, and that first year they kind of drop off because they know, oh, I still got 3 years after this. Like I can kind of pull back on the throttle a bit. But how did you continue to motivate yourself, being like, yeah, I have a 2-year deal. This is great, but I don't want to get comfortable. I still want to perform to my best ability, because I think that's an important thing to talk about just for future athletes.
Yeah, it is. but I think an aspect that's always helped me is the confidence, as I have said a couple times. So when you have, for me, it was a benefit because I knew I was signed not only that season but the next season, and I don't want to say that I felt a little more relaxed, but I knew I had time to get my play going. I didn't have to feel like I didn't have to panic or anything like that. I would, took confidence in the fact that this team obviously liked what they saw and they wanted to sign me to a 2-year deal. And, they made it happen. They made me feel at home from day one. And, obviously I wanted to return the favor. And, hockey's just a lot more fun when you're winning. And if for me that means producing to help the team, then I wanted to do that. So I know when you're on teams where it's not going so well, it's just every day it's just a drag a little bit. So I think every player really wants to be on a winning team, and I was just looking to do my part. And again, I didn't know if I was going to stop playing at the end of that 2-year deal or keep playing. I just always wanted to have the drive to keep my options open, and if I did want to keep playing, then maybe that meant I get another good contract after that. I was never really satisfied with that, and just always trying to take it every day at a time.
Oh, it's a good way to look at it. And I hope anyone listening kind of sees it the same way, never being satisfied and, you
Right.
know, having
I
that
have to
2-year
say
deal. Sorry, what?
my yeah, I think, you mentioned like there's a few athletes that maybe tail off a little bit once they get uh that the security, but my impression is most guys that are playing at this level, they're here for a reason, and that they're self-disciplined and they have that drive. So I would say most guys, probably see it as I do. And there's a lot of really good professionals on my team and in this league. So seeing guys that have success year after year, and you know, it's refreshing to see.
No, it's that's as you said, that's why they're all professionals. That's why they are in that
Right.
league or that point in their career because of that you know, discipline, I would say, and work ethic.
Right.
Um, wanted to ask you too. So you mentioned you know, not sure what's gonna happen after if you can use that degree or not, but I thought maybe you could be an agent because after that first year, you end up getting your union buddy there, Bodes,
Yeah.
to come to Ingolstadt, and you both have been there ever since. I believe you've played 4 years together, including this year. But
Yeah.
again, that was kind of the Corona summer. But was he reaching out to you and kind of being like, "Hey, I have this opportunity. Like, should I take it?" kind of thing. Would you say you get some of the compliment there of getting him to come to Ingolstadt?
Yeah. I think, as you probably know, in European hockey, you end up, you know, signing on teams where guys generally, because it's a new experience and you need some kind of comfort factor to have a reason to go there. I just think it works out that way a lot. And yeah, he was texting me, and his wife Alex was texting my wife, and just getting all the details. And we were selling them on it. I guess you never want to sell it too hard, just in case they come here and don't end up liking it. But I thought it would be a great opportunity. He actually lives right upstairs from me, and we knew that we would, you know, be able to hang out all the time. And I think he really liked it. He ended up signing for a couple years, and he's been a big part of the team. So we now have families, and it's just been, this league is great for being able to maintain that personal side of your life and being able to enjoy the family, but also it's very professional once you're at the rink and playing very competitive hockey.
That is one thing I think is good in Germany is there is the ability to kind of have the juggling of both the professional of the sport and then also the family life. You're at the rink 3-4 hours a day, and a lot of guys live close, so it's you come home most nights you're sleeping in your own bed after road games unless you're going to maybe Bremerhaven or something. But no, they've done a good job of that, and I think that's a big reason why a lot of North Americans come to Germany to play, just kind of second home feeling, and everybody's treated well. I want to talk to you about that run you guys went on last year. So you end up going to the finals last year against Munich there. And the crazy thing was, like, you guys kind of were dealing with injuries, down the stretch there. And then especially, you end up losing both your goalies and end up having to play your third young goalie there in net. But just talk about that
Yeah.
run, and maybe that's credit to kind of you guys as a team, all coming together no matter what was thrown in front of you.
Yeah, I think you said it just there. With my two, we already talked about the other long playoff run I had, and there's just so many crazy things that happen during a playoff run. I'm sure that's just how it is. It's a lot of really intense hockey games. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be all kinds of stuff. So it was a crazy year last year. We were able to knock out Dusseldorf in the first round, and then Mannheim in the second. And we had lost a few players. I'm sure every team loses players as you move on, but we were always, believing in ourselves. We knew it was the next guy up mentality. We had guys step up big, including, you mentioned the third goalie that had to go in there, Jonas Stetmer. He won us a game in that final against Munich and at Munich, which was, that was a big game for us. But obviously we ended up falling short too. So as we move forward, it's just more experience that everyone has under their belt, and just a little more motivation to keep driving and try to get the end goal.
Yeah, and especially just talking about this year, like the league is so tight this year. Everybody's within striking distance, so every game is very important this year. And I would say after every weekend, like there's always fluctuation in the standings because the points are so tight.
Yeah,
What
for sure.
One guy I want to talk to you about just quickly, he's obviously been a big influence in Ingolstadt over the past couple of years, is Tim Regan. I had him on a couple of weeks ago. He obviously was used to be the assistant coach and assistant GM. Now he's the GM or sport manager. But obviously I feel like he would have communication with you, being a leader there, you and yourself, and Bodie, I would say. Is he pretty communicative with you and just, very open about what he's trying to build and how he sees the team going forward and stuff like that?
Yeah, he's very open because he's got a real structured mind of like what he wants the organization to be and what he thinks will lead to success. So he realizes he's always got to be checking in with the coaching staff and players of different roles, and just to make sure that everything's moving in the same direction. And again, you mentioned he has a vision. I noticed that from day one when he took over the GM job. I had seen him on a day-to-day basis more when he was the assistant coach, how hard he worked and his hockey knowledge. And then he was able to, pivot a little bit to the GM position. He knows obviously German hockey really well. He knows what he thinks is going to make a team successful. So he has a very open line of communication to make sure, that everyone feels, I guess, first of all, feels at home. He knows there's as we talked about, the family aspect. He knows that if it's only when that's in place that guys can really reach their potential on the ice. So he's just on board fully. And, we have a good relationship now. I've obviously been with the team for 5 years that he's been here. So, and he's from Dorchester, Mass. So he actually played at RBI too. So there's a lot of coincidences there, looking back.
Any subtle chirps thrown under the breath there about your winning record against RPI when you were at Union?
Yeah, there are, but then he always talks about the days, obviously we're far apart in age, so he played in another era. So I think at that time Union maybe wasn't so good, and it was probably the other direction. But yeah, of course, I always remind him I think I looked up one time what our record was. So I was happy to say we were on the winning side.
And he had a long career in Germany, and as you said, I think he's very detailed on the day-to-day things, and also like he has a clear vision of how he sees, whether it's Ingolstadt or hockey in general in Germany. So a great guy to have as your general manager, I will say.
Yeah.
One other thing to talk to you about before we kind of switch to another side of it is, this year you guys obviously got to play your first time, I would say, in the Champions Hockey League there.
Yeah.
So how was that experience for you? Obviously being able to play different teams from other countries, travel, and just, in a sense playing, against the world's best from every country.
Yeah, it was definitely cool. That was something I wanted to be able to do, and with the success we had last year, we finally qualified for it. So we were able to we played in Salzburg, we played in Pardubice, Czech. Sorry if I'm pronouncing them terribly, but and then we also played in Rouen, France. So got to see some new places. Obviously, those are 3 different leagues. We also played teams from Sweden, and yeah, I guess that's it. Another team from Czech, 2 teams from Sweden. So we saw different styles, different players. You know, some teams are full with younger players that are prospects, and then there's veterans. There's different amount of imports. There's a lot new to see, but you know, certainly going through camp and having, I'd say, more meaningful games than exhibition right away. It was good, and I think it, you know, in theory, could help a team hit the ground running a little more. I think we unfortunately didn't get off to a good start and with our Penny Dell schedule, but it was a good experience, and we got to play a lot of good teams.
I do agree with, what you said about like instead of playing like exhibition games, 8 of them in preseason, because preseason is very long here in Europe, you end up, getting right into the CHL there pretty quickly and end up, getting that competition going right away. I'm curious, so like, once you get past I think like maybe the first round or even then the last couple of games of the first round, like by then your season's going on too. So you're not playing, whether it's 3, maybe some teams, depending on schedule, again, 4 games a week. Like as a player, does that ever kind of get like tiring to you being like, okay, like can this one tournament thing kind of end in a sense? Or are you just like, I'll play as many games I want. I'd rather do that than practice.
Yeah, you know, it's a little bit more challenge managing the schedule. Like, I guess from the coaching staff perspective, normally you need to have off days to recover, but then all of a sudden you have a game. You know, we had a game on a Tuesday in Växjö, Sweden. So it's just managing like how to go about it. What's the best way? And as far as, you know, the competition, obviously, whenever you're on the ice, you want to go out and win the game. You know, I wasn't thinking about the bigger picture per se, but we had an opportunity to prove ourselves and to go out and have success. So we ended up losing out in the series to Växjö in a 2-game aggregate scoring. But, you know, I think it improved us as a team, and we put together some good efforts, what just came up short. And, you know, once it was over, obviously that means less games down the stretch. So try to take advantage and then bring some of that success to the domestic schedule.
Yeah, I say a lot of guys, it's cool to do it, but by the end when you're juggling that schedule, it
Yeah.
does, as you said, because off days are important, recovery days are very important. So you get limited on those at some point. But
Right.
you know, switching from the hockey side, I'm curious to, as you said, you are married and you are a dad now. So your wife Lindsay and daughter Lucy, I believe. But how's dad life been, man? Because obviously that's a different step. So how's that been, and how has your family been enjoying, the journey in Germany?
It's great. Yeah. Dad life's awesome. You know, every day is new and a lot of fun. And I think we are in a great place in Ingolstadt where we now we're so familiar with the area. It's like a home to us. You know, there's so much to do. And the good thing about this league is there's a lot of people in similar situations. There's a lot of people my age with kids, and she is my daughter. We call her Lulu, but she has a lot of friends on the team, and I think she, you know, she's only 2, but like to think that she will have some memories, I guess, from her days in Germany. You know, it was a big part of her life growing up. She was born in Munich, so it's like it's going to be such a part of our life now, and I really enjoy dad life every day.
That's awesome to hear.
But
And yeah, hopefully your daughter remembers it when she gets older, or at least some of it, because it's a cool experience for sure.
yeah, you know, as a player, you know, you want them to remember going on the ice with you after a win and stuff like that. So, you know, we'll see.
Couple more for you here. You've obviously been very gracious with your time. As you said, it's believe it's a day off for you guys, so I don't want to steal it all from you. But
No worries.
you know, unfortunately as hockey players we can't play forever as much as we all wish we could. So I'm curious how many more years do you plan to play for, or is it just kind of, at this point taking it either year by year or contract by contract? Because obviously, it's one thing, it's yourself, whether playing, body, everything like that, but also, being a husband and a father, your family also factors into these decisions now as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's more variables than just the hockey side of it. But, you know, we know on the baseline, we have a place that we like to be. So obviously that helps. But in the end, there will be benefits to when we're home and settled. And as far as my career, I don't like to put like a number on it of, I want to have a good year on hockey just to keep my options open. And if it ends up being my last year, it'd be good to know that I was still competitive and on a good team, even right up to the last year. So I kind of take it year by year. I'm 34 now, so I think I'm fortunate to be able to play to this point in my life. And just, I really don't, I am thinking to the future because it's important to plan for the next aspect. But as far as hockey, it's just keeping the options open, taking it day at a time. I don't change the way I maybe a little more work in the, warming up the body and managing your injuries and stuff like that, but still approach the game the same way and, try to go out there and be an impact player.
That's great to hear and a great way to go about it. You mentioned though, you have, you know, obviously the thought comes in your head a little bit about the next step. Have you thought about, whenever that time comes, what things you might be interested in doing? Or, you mentioned before you would hopefully use that degree that you got almost 10 years ago now, whatever we are, graduated from university. But any thoughts to life after?
Yeah, I've thought a lot. I've been meeting with, I think, being at Union College, you have a really good alumni base and just networking with people like that, understanding what they do. I think, in the end, again, I want to keep options open. A lot of people retire as a player and they want to stay in hockey in some capacity, but I see a lot of benefits to just, pivoting to a different career. I know people do it, and it might be, the unknown and a little intimidating at first, but I think it could be rewarding to, as using my degree, something in whatever it might be, sales, finance, whatever. But I've been meeting with people and, I've met a lot of people that played in Germany, like specifically that, have transitioned and started a new career. So I know it's possible, and you just gotta be willing to, try new things and to use a lot of the qualities that you learned as a professional hockey player into the next career. So I'm not specifically owned in on anything, but I am definitely preparing for the future.
That's good that you've been thinking about it and like networking, because I do know, like, us as hockey players, we sometimes just focus so much on the game and think it'll never end, and then it might end abruptly, and then as you mentioned, there's that kind of shock factor of, okay, what do I do now? But someone like
Right.
yourself who's been kind of opening doors, poking around to kind of have options, like that's definitely the smart way to do it, so that you kind of don't get shocked down the road if something happens out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah, I think it will be an adjustment one way or another, but my goal is just to be as prepared for it. And, we're home in the summers. We're obviously training and doing family stuff, but you got time to go out and meet, alumni or just, you know, anyone really, like any affiliations you have with, whether it be my wife's family or my family, family friends. But there's a lot of industry, a lot of jobs in Boston. So as long as I'm in the area, I figure I might as well, take the chance to meet people, gain some valuable perspective, and just, understand different lines of work and stuff like that.
Oh, it's a great way to look at it. And as we know, it doesn't matter what business you're in, it's all about who you know. So,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
um, two more for you here, and then I'll let you go. Um,
Okay.
did you think you would have the career you've had when you look back on it?
I guess I would say no, just because I don't think I ever saw myself playing in another country. And I don't think I saw myself playing till I was 34. Like that's, I don't want to say I was doubting myself, but it's just like you don't really know what's going to happen. And a lot of my friends and family, they end up settling in the area and working, I guess, more everyday jobs that people are used to. But I just was taking it year at a time, and I knew if it was time for a change that I would have to do that and hang up the skates. But I was fortunate to be in some good situations that allowed me to have success. And now that I'm been playing, I guess this is my 11th year. I don't know if you even know. I don't know the number exact, but I don't think I would have thought I'd be playing to this point. But it's been so rewarding, and I wouldn't change anything looking back.
It is your 11th year, just so you got the
Okay.
math correct there.
Yeah.
Last one for you here. I'd like to end the podcast on this one. What is one piece of advice or multiple pieces of advice you would give your younger self, or maybe the younger generation listening? So if you were speaking to Wayne Simpson at 16, 17 years old, what's a couple pieces of advice that you might give him?
Um, I guess I would just approach the game like with more of a professional mindset, even though you're an amateur at that point. Just the idea that every day you're there, you're trying to build to something. And for me, I guess I wish I was more vocal and more a leader at that point. It's just, it's the fine line when you're coming in as a freshman. Like, obviously, there's senior captains there and stuff like that, but just going there, knowing your role, obviously, but also just being confident and like knowing you belong, and uh, approaching every day more professionally, I guess, would be my advice.
It's a good one to look at because obviously, you know, people, it sometimes takes a little time for them to mature that way or kind of go about the game that way. They kind of learn maybe a little too late. So it's
Yeah.
good to start that at a young age, as you would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time. It was great to hear your story today. A lot of good advice, things you've learned along the way. Hopefully the younger generation can you know, listen to this and, take some of the advice you've given us and the cool stories about playing pro. And, you obviously, as you said, you worked your way up and were never satisfied. And that's a big reason why you're 34 and still playing pro at this age and producing. So I'll let you go enjoy the rest of your day off, with your family there. But Wayne, I appreciate you taking the time, and I think we'll see each other in a couple weeks here. We play each other again, I'm assuming. So
That's
you know,
right. Yeah.
good luck
Yeah.
the rest of the way, except for us against us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah. Enjoy your holidays there.
Thanks. And for those listening, if you haven't already, give the podcast a follow on YouTube. Check out the live version. Give us a follow on Instagram. Give Simmer a follow as well. And until next week, cheers and ciao.